It's all about the finish. Any good story needs a great finish. Any great movie or TV show needs a great finish. When it's not, well, it can pretty much wreck the entire work of art. Are you listening? The Mist or the final season of How I Met Your Mother? Welcome to Wrestling with Egos. We do promise to finish and go to the finish and go home and that be a wrap. My name's Patrick. I'm joined as I am each and every week by my two best friends in the whole world, Isaac and Brian. Gentlemen, how goes?
Gentlemen, good to see you all.
And you guys see there's a blank space in camera 4. No, it's not RJ. It is the hardest working man in wrestling journalism today. Friend
Don't
of the
lie
show,
to the people.
and the man, the legend himself, Chris Mueller from Bleacher Report. Doc, what's going on, man?
Oh, not much. I'm definitely not the hardest working person in wrestling media. Not by a long shot.
All evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, we've seen evidence that says that you're outworking everybody else.
I know how many hours I put in, and I know how many hours other people put in. Trust me.
Well, okay,
There's a big difference,
that might
but
be
I appreciate it.
at the same time though. Quality over quantity.
Yeah, I try.
Oh, you succeed, my friend. You succeed. Well, tonight, boys and girls, we are talking about the most protected finishers in the history of wrestling. So that means we're not going to talk about the attitude adjustment because because literally in the last 2.5 seconds, Brian and Isaac have already kicked out of that move.
I got to stay in the match, man. I got to stay in the match.
We're not going to talk about Ric Flair's figure 4 leg lock because God only knows he never beat anybody with it. We're going to talk about the ones that when you see it happen, that's a wrap. Game good as the late great Pete Van Wieren would say, good night, game over, drive home safely. So we're going to get down to it. And I don't know how you guys want to start this off, but I think it goes without saying that we really need to touch on, I think, like the first true protected finisher in this business. And that would be the leg drop, brother.
Yeah, in my notes, I used the Evernote app and I put a facepalm emoji next to the leg drop when I wrote it down because that was what I was doing while I was typing it.
Well, I mean, yeah, our thoughts about Hulk Hogan aside, we're talking about the finisher. And when he hit the leg, I mean, maybe less than 5 people kicked out of it?
There's one over my shoulder.
I mean,
the Ultimate Warrior did in their match, right?
Right. I'm pretty sure. Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
and then there was The Rock. I'm willing to bet at least 1 or 2 people in WCW did it too. Probably Sting.
I think Sting did.
But yeah, it was a very protected finisher for many, many years.
I mean, long before we were chastising John Cena for the 5 moves of doom, Hogan had 3. Comeback, big boot, leg drop.
Don't forget the point.
Oh yeah, well that's part of the comeback.
Yeah.
And the leg drop meant that was Isaac's doing it there.
And we will stipulate that some of these moves we're talking about, I mean, I go back and watch a Hogan match now, and he drops the leg on somebody, and it's like, well, yeah, you could kick out of that. All it is dropping your leg across somebody's chest or neck. It's not like, it's that debilitating of a move, and yet...
Well, that's the suspension of disbelief that we have in wrestling. That's what makes this so good.
Another reason I have the facepalm emoji next to it is
right. Really and truly, there's several of these moves that You know, if we're really talking about the logistics of them, yeah, they're very easy to avoid. Very easy. I'm gonna throw another one out for you guys, and then I'm gonna I'll pass the ball to everybody else. And it's from the same general, same era of time in wrestling. The DDT.
Oh yes, I didn't write that one down, but I forgot about that one.
When Jake
Well,
ball game.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Doc, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, Jake is probably the only guy that it was ever protected with, though, right? Like,
him
everybody uses it now.
maybe Raven in ECW.
Oh yeah, true.
Maybe Raven. I mean, I know more people kicked out of Ravens than they did Jake's. But I mean, which pisses me off because now everybody uses a DDT and it's just a transitional move.
I think Alexa Bliss is using it as her finisher now again, which is kind
Yeah.
of nice.
Yeah, between that and Twisted Bliss, I mean, sometimes the DDT's the setup for it, and sometimes she just goes for the pin. But yeah, and you know, every once in a while somebody will do it, like you know, nowadays,
Like Ziggler has that really nice jumping DDT that he'll hit.
yeah, Moxley's got the paradigm shift. Bobby Roode had the in WWE and NXT had the glorious DDT, which was more or less the same thing that Gangrel used.
Yes.
But
Even Edge used that for a while too.
oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, good.
But aside from that, I mean, the DDT's one just like the leg drop, where apparently with Jake Roberts, it just has magical powers.
I mean, I think getting dropped on the top of your head probably would do a better job of keeping you down than a leg drop in most situations.
It's just like anything else. It all depends on how you execute it.
Right.
You know, because there's some theater here. I mean, we're trying to make it look like, oh, geez, he got dropped on his head. You know, no wonder. I mean, we're not actually going to, like, you know, I'm not saying that if I was DDT'd right now, you couldn't pin me for like 30.
Well, here's something to think about. And we literally just saw this last night on Dynamite. I can't remember who it was that hit it, but somebody, it was Takeshka hit it on Moxley last night. Sheer drop brainbuster. In reality, somebody's dead.
Yeah.
But nobody ever. I can literally count on one hand how many people I have seen finish with a brainbuster. Chavo, Coco Beware, Kid Cash, and Austin Aries.
The irony of that is that you didn't mention the brainbusters in that sentence. You would think.
But yeah, Tully and Arn didn't finish with that. They finished with a damn pile driver.
Right.
Because, you know, it's Blanchard and Anderson, damn it. So I'm gonna hand it over to our guest. What's on your list so far, Doc?
I mean, if you want to go modern day, the one-winged angel, I think, has only been kicked out by one person.
Yeah, and his name was Kenny Omega.
Well, no, like he hit it on somebody in Japan who kicked out. It's never been kicked out in AEW. But there was somebody in Japan. It was either Naito, Okada, or maybe Tanahashi, but I don't think so. I can't remember. I just know that it's one of those things where there's like literally one person has kicked out of it. It's super protected.
Right. And when Hangman beat Kenny for the title, Hangman hit Kenny with it, and Kenny kicked out.
Right. And that goes back to the execution thing. It's like a person's finisher is their finisher because they hit it better than anybody else. So Hangman shouldn't be able to beat him.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, I think the one-winged angel, especially in this day and age in wrestling, I think as far as protected finishers, that one's really the gold standard. I think there are a couple in WWE that are very low key on the same level, but nobody even recognizes them. And I'll get to those in just a minute. Isaac, you've been fairly quiet, my friend.
I'm sitting here and I'm observing and just listening, and I got a couple. One, I think one that's really been protected is Goldberg's jackhammer.
Mm-hmm.
No one really kicked that. You knew once he got the spear, he got him up. It was over, locked down. Let's go home.
Right.
That was one. That was the one that was really coming to mind. One that went back in the day that I kept thinking was very protected was the crossface chicken wing from Bob Backlund. Not many people got out of that. It was very kind of hard to get out of,
Very
but
much. Now let me ask a question for the panel, all three of you guys, and Isaac. When I mention this, chime in as well. Does that one kind of go down the list a little bit because of how short of a run Backlund had in his his resurgence in the 90s?
Well, he
I
was
don't-
using that before the 90s, though, wasn't he? Wasn't that his finish for a long time?
I
Yeah.
thought he was a roll-up guy.
no.
I mean, maybe when he was a baby face, he used the roll up a lot, but I think that the chicken wing was like always his finisher.
It was back in the late 70s. That was his thing.
I mean,
Yeah.
my thought is the move is still the move. I mean, doesn't matter what context you're using it in. I don't think. I mean, and I'm curious to see how many submissions we mention in this, because I actually have no submissions on my list. Come to think of it, I'm looking at it. So it just depends on who it is that's applying it, how well it's applied, and in what context it's applied. The move is still the move.
I got one submission hold, and right now is the perfect time to mention it. $1 Million Dream.
Okay. Along with that vein, I don't remember who the guy was that was using it, but when I first started watching wrestling in the 80s, I want to say it was Hercules used the full Nelson.
He did.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that seems impossible to get out of, to me. Now, I'm sure there's leverage, and if you're able to move your arm, put your arms up a certain way, you can slide out of it and stuff like that. But he would lock that into somebody. And yeah, he was locking it into jobbers 99% of the time, who I didn't know were jobbers at the time. But to me, like the full Nelson's one, that seemed really painful, really like if you didn't know what you were doing, how am I going to get out of it? And it was only a matter of time before you, quote unquote, passed out.
Yeah.
Chris Masters, the Master Lock.
Yeah.
It was super protected until Lashley broke it. And now Lashley's using the Hurt Lock.
Yeah. You're right. Lashley was the one that broke that. I forgot about that.
I mean, technically Cena did too. People forget about that. There was a Master Lock segment where Cena, he didn't break it by sheer power, though. He backed Masters into the corner as hard as he could to break it.
Right.
And so, they kind of didn't count that. So, yeah,
Sure.
Lashley was definitely the first guy to just bust out of it.
Okay.
But we never really saw anybody, especially on Hercules or the Chris Masters, someone if Hercules had put it on Hogan, Hogan could have got out of it. If he could have actually applied it to Andre the Giant, he would have got out of it in 2 seconds. It depends on who he put it on.
Right. And when you're talking about Hercules never put it on anybody of consequence. So, I mean, as far as Hercules' version of the full Nelson, I don't know if I would consider that protected as opposed to maybe protected by circumstance.
True. That's not really one that I want to my top of all time, but it was one that as we started talking, I started thinking about.
Give me one on your list then.
The one when this discussion first came up, it was RJ who brought it up several weeks ago, and we went back and forth, and this is going to be a great topic for a show. The very first one that popped into my head was Triple H and the pedigree. Because for a long time, when he would hit the pedigree, and somebody brought this up in the chat. You know, active Triple H, Reign of Terror Triple H, all that, yes. Management Triple H, not so much. But, you know, I can name you many a Rock match where he hit a pedigree and that's it. Game over. You know, no pun intended. Or maybe pun intended, because we're talking about Triple H, so.
See, and maybe let's see if anybody agrees with me or agrees with Brian on this stance. I honestly think that the fact that it became such a easy to kick out of move once, you know, in the last 5 or 6 years, that's kind of, I think, kind of watered it down. Was the fact that he would hit, you know, he would hit it 5 times and people would kick out in a WrestleMania match. I guess that's my opinion. Isaac, Doc, I don't know how you guys feel about it.
I see where you're going with that. I mean, it was protected. I think it got watered down once Triple H wasn't doing it anymore because he, you know, went into management. You know, once Seth Rollins started doing it, it was like, I mean, he's got it, but he's not doing it like Triple H. You know,
We're not, but we're talking about Triple H's. You know, anybody, you know, I think we've kind of already discussed, like with the DDT, everybody else doing it, it doesn't matter as much because, you know, they're not the master of it, whereas Triple H is. I think Doc's the one that brought that point up. So
Another point on the pedigree, too, that I just thought of, there was a point in time where Triple H even started doing it differently. I always just remember him interlocking his hands.
Yep.
And then, like, I don't even remember I couldn't put a year on this if it was a gun held in my head, but like 2011, 2012, he just started like putting his arms underneath the other person's arms. And as long as the hands were on the back, you know, especially when he'd be against like Big Show or Vladimir Kozlov or somebody bigger than him, Brock Lesnar, like when he would hit a pedigree on Brock Lesnar, those hands were not interlocked, you know? So, right. And I think that lessens the impact of it, if I'm not mistaken. Less
I think it has to do a little bit with the size of the person. Like getting Brock in that position and locking his hands would be hard because Brock is wider than Triple H is.
Yes.
But yeah, like I do know what you mean. I think there might have actually been somebody who got injured because Triple H didn't like unlock his hands quick enough to let them protect themselves on the fall.
Oh, okay.
And
so
I can think of one. I can actually think of one match in particular where he hit it and it looked really nasty. It was a match with Foley when he was Cactus Jack. And like Triple H, when he hit it, like never let go of the locked hands until like Foley was fully flat already on the ground. But now if you see him hit it, like he practically releases the arms halfway through it so they can get their arms under them to protect themselves.
Right.
So I think that may have been why it was altered just a little bit.
Okay, that's fair.
Probably, and I think I remember the moment you were talking about where Triple H did injure somebody. It was a Superstars taping, or something like that.
Yes, it might have just been like a broken nose or something. I don't think it was anything serious, but it was enough for them to be like, yeah, maybe you should not lock the hands.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and play my ace card because I want to make sure that this finisher gets the proper treatment, because I honestly will say that, in my opinion, probably the most protected finisher in wrestling. No, not the epic Cobra, Brian.
I mean, we got to get an equal time. We got to, get them all out there. Go ahead and debate. Let's hear it.
First off, for those of you that are watching us on either Anchor Podcast, Apple Podcast, Google, Spotify, you didn't get to see Brian doing the little hand motion. For those of you that are crazy enough to watch us on YouTube, well, then I'm sorry you had to see that. 3D.
I was going to mention that.
There you go.
Can anybody name the one person that's ever kicked out of 3D?
What promotion was it in?
TNA Impact.
Sting?
Nope.
I got a kick out of the 3D,
Austin
brother.
Aries.
Huh?
Austin Aries.
Chris Sabin.
Okay.
It was the night that Team 3D split up because they lost the titles to the Motor City Machine Guns. They've been kicked out of 3D, and then Bubba turned on Devon because he blamed Devon for Sabin kicking out of 3D, blah, 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 blah.
Is that when he became Bully Ray, kind of?
Exactly when he became Bully Ray.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
I wasn't watching TNA at that period, and I'm still not.
Well, I was watching it here and there, but I only remember it from hearing Bully Ray talk about it somewhat recently on Busted Open. So and that's why I remembered it, because I was like, wait, like Chris Sabin kicked out of that? What the hell? I would have been the last person I expected, but the only person that's ever kicked out of it. And to double down on how protected that finisher is, aren't the Usos doing it now, calling it the 1D?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Who's kicked out of that? Nobody.
And I don't think they do a very good job of it either, quite frankly.
No, they don't, because, often imitated, never duplicated. But I'm pointing out the fact that, okay, yeah, they're doing it, and it's kind of a half-assed version, but still nobody's kicked out of it. Everybody and their brother kicks out of their splash. Nobody's kicked out of the 1D. So that's why I put that one at the top of my list, because it's just like, okay, now 2 teams are doing it, and it's protected by both. Doc, what else you got on your list?
I mean, I got another tag team finisher. The Doomsday Device was super protected when it was Hawk and Animal. Anytime it was like, hide and rank or whatever, it might have been kicked out of here and there. But when it was Hawk and Animal for years, that move put everybody away.
Well, at the same time, the way Animal would throw somebody off of his shoulders, yeah, it was protected because they tried to kill people.
I mean, they got pretty close with Henry Godwin.
God. Oh, my God. You just get flashbacks of that. Brian, you look puzzled. Do you remember this?
Well, I kind of do. And you mentioned Henry Godwin, and I could only make it through about 10 minutes. There's the newest table for 3 on the network is Undertaker and the Bone Skull Crew. And it's basically just them looking for excuses to have shots of Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
So don't know if it's worth the watch, but Henry Godwin's one of the people that sits down with him and reminisces about stuff. What incarnation was this? Were they the Godwins, like the Phineas and?
Yeah, it was a tag match, and pretty sure he actually broke his neck.
He did.
Okay.
He did.
And I don't know if it's ever gone on record, but I'm pretty sure he blames himself for it. Like, he doesn't blame Hawk and Animal. He said, like, I swung back too early or something like that. Like, I think he took responsibility for it and didn't try to put the blame on them, but I could be thinking of something else. I'm not sure.
I've never heard any interview about it, so I wouldn't know. But yeah, Doomsday Device. Keep in mind, my God, that finish was protected not only over multiple promotions, but multiple continents.
Yeah.
I mean, they hit that thing in Japan, ball game. They hit it in WWE, ball game. WCW, NWA, ball game. AWA, ball game.
Yeah, I mean, the Legion of Doom are definitely one of my favorite tag team of all time, but like, I feel like not enough people talk about them enough these days. When people keep talking about, like, best tag teams in the history of the business, like, they need to be in that conversation because they were both very good.
I completely agree, and I think that's just kind of, how society is now. Is like the here and now. I recently read somewhere, I think it was an ESPN article, John Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies,
That he would cook.
he thought he
Jordan.
could have been able to take Michael Jordan in its prime. Child, please.
I took that personally.
Didn't LeVar Ball say the same thing in an interview once?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no.
You can say it, but we're also going to think that you're smoking something, you got something else going on, because there's no way Ja Morant is taking Jordan.
No. Hell,
that happened.
year-old Jordan probably getting pissed off reading that, and he's taking it personal, and here he comes.
Yeah.
But if you guys go back and watch the documentary on what happened with Michael Jordan, he showed up when somebody called him out and dogged him.
Right, but I think the point that we're trying to make with that is the fact that nobody wants to talk about, nobody mentions LOD because the people that are talking about it either are one, too young, or B, aren't informed enough to look at.
Well, it's the recency bias that we talk about all the time, and I feel like we may have done a GOAT discussion on the Road Warriors a year and a half ago or something like that.
You guys did. I was on vacation for that because I'm literally thinking, this is kind of a slam dunk. Why are we doing it that way?
Yeah. It's the point about they did it over multiple promotions. Like I got my eyes open in that episode about how much the Warriors got around. To Japan, to AWA, to WCW. I had no idea. I thought they were just WCW and WWE. I did not know about the before and the after and all that stuff.
They were the most decorated tag team in the history of the business until the Dudleys came around. And
Makes sense.
The Dudleys are the only team that's ever surpassed them.
There's one more that I have on my list before I get to what I think is my ace in the hole, because I've had time to think about this over the past several weeks. You're probably going to lump it in with the pedigree because of how other people have kicked out of this too. But for the longest time, when Shawn Michaels hit Sweet Chin Music, it was game over too.
Generally, your thoughts?
I mean, the first time I can remember somebody kicking out of that was Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12.
Ding! That's exactly what I was thinking.
It may have happened at some point earlier because it wasn't always his finish. Like him and Jannetty were using the super kick as just a
transition.
A mid-level move when they were a tag, and so I can't say for sure. Maybe they used it against each other and kicked out before it became his big finish. But once it was his signature move, once it was like Sweet Chin Music, like that was over.
You just made me think of about the sharpshooter, the Bret Hart's version of the sharpshooter, not the Rock's version of the sharpshooter, because the Rock's version of the sharpshooter is terrible. I can say it. But I feel like whenever Bret put the sharpshooter on somebody, because of the excellence of execution and his technical savvy, that was it.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, case in point, I know we did a homework assignment on this one long time ago, but SummerSlam 91, when he locked in the sharpshooter on Mr. Perfect, while Perfect was trying to do a low leg drop.
Right.
Bret caught his leg, grapevine him, then rolled him over. Boom, good night. Perfect taps, perfect gift. So I definitely agree with you. I would be more inclined, Brian, to agree with you more about the sharpshooter than I would Sweet Chin Music.
And I don't know why during this whole process that never came to my mind, but I'm glad that it finally did, because some of mine in hindsight and retrospect are kind of eh.
Yeah. And Doc, I really would like to hear your thoughts on what I'm about to say, because I have a feeling you might have a pretty good argument as to why I might be wrong here. Okay. I looked at the super kick, and the only time I've ever seen it be ridiculously effective was Chris Adams in WCW. I remember watching that as a kid because it was on ESPN. Shawn, I saw people kick out of even during his run with DX. When he came back, people kicked out of it. And now that move is the most watered down move in all of wrestling. So
everybody does it.
I mean, so I can't look at the super kick as a definitively, protected move because it's the DDT now.
I mean, now it is. It's kind of, again, it goes back to the whole like who uses it thing, because the sharpshooter gets used by a lot of people, and most people can barely even apply it correctly, let alone finish a match with it.
True.
I mean, Cesaro's finished a few matches with it, but most people, like Britt Baker and Adam Cole, both tried to use it at in the Owen Hart tournament, and like both of them applied it kind of poorly.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Brett, it's like I can think of a few times where people would like get to the ropes to force a break, and then he would just lock it back on later anyway, and still win.
There was one time that it was broken, but that was broken by Owen, and they used it because Owen was that good, and he was trained by his father that he broke it.
It was WrestleMania 10.
He broke it.
And then also, when they had their steel cage match,
that's the one I was thinking of.
Brett reversed it on Owen. Owen had it locked in, and Brett like pulled him down and pulled his legs up into it.
That's right on that one. Speaking of WrestleMania 10, probably the match that stole the show from WrestleMania 10, one of those people I think has an extremely protected finisher, and that was Scott Hall's Razor's Edge. Think about it. Who kicked out of that?
Yeah, because it's the kind of move that, like, if he wasn't going to win the match, he just would never hit it successfully. People would pop out of it before he dropped him.
Right.
I can't really remember how protected it was in WCW, but in WWE it definitely was like, it always ended the match.
Right. I don't know how to what level you'd want to talk about its level of protection, because Scott Hall was never more than like the highest level mid card, especially in WWE. But it's definitely something to look at. Isaac, Brian,
I got one that I just thought about, and that was the double drop kick by the Rock and Roll Express. Back in the day, once they hit it, it was over. You went home. And not many people kicked out of it. Not many people knew that much about them, but I saw them so many times in WCW, on different other promotions. Not many people kicked out.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that one, and I don't know why, but I'm not saying that that nobody kicked out of it, because it was when Ricky and Robert hit that. You're right, it was a wrap. But for some reason, that one doesn't resonate with me nearly as much as 3D or the Doomsday Device.
Is it because of the level of impact involved of that one compared to the other ones that we've already mentioned, and isn't as believable as a finisher?
I don't know. I think it's one, the believability, because at the same time, you also, during the course of a match, you would see Ricky and Robert each hit individual drop kicks, multiple times in a match. So all of a sudden now, them both drop kicking you in the face at the same time is supposed to be the death nail.
Yes.
I'm just saying. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you, but
Doc, what else you have on your list, good friend?
Another modern day one that I think has only really been kicked out of maybe once or twice is Corbin's End of Days.
Yes.
And it was only really within the past year that anybody kicked out of it. Like he went years
Drew
without.
I think
Yeah.
Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania this year is the only person that's ever done it.
So yeah, that one is one that like people have talked about it. Like that's one thing Corbin has done really well is made sure his finisher is protected.
I might be committing blasphemy here, and if you guys don't agree with this, you can find me on Twitter at @rantmodeon. In terms of its level of protection in this modern age of wrestling, I would put End of Days up there with the One-Winged Angel.
I mean, Kenny's been active longer and using it longer, so it is hard to compare those two. Plus, I think there's a good chance Kenny's had more matches just in the last few years, minus the time he's been away.
Right. And
but yeah, in terms of like modern day wrestling, those two guys are the two who I really can't think of more than the one example each.
Right. Isaac, Brian, your thoughts on my little bold hot take?
I disagree.
Okay, why?
I agree to a certain point that yes, one or two times, but I can still think of other people that other times or other people that like a move per se, whether it be by a current person or by someone in the past, you rarely were going to see them this move be countered or someone get out of it. But
I feel like in a vacuum, I mean, what makes me disagree with that is just the cachet of Kenny versus the cachet of Baron Corbin. I mean, nobody's, we're not. What?
No, duh. I mean, we're not. I'm just.
But the dictionary definition, I would tend to say, yeah, you're right, because all this run through NXT, he hits the End of Days on you, he's getting the pin. Same thing with Kenny. He hits the One-Winged Angel on you, whether it's 5 minutes into the match or 25 minutes into the match. That's it. So by the definition of what we're talking about, as incendiary as it may sound, you're right.
Right. Who else has got a good one on their list? Brian still got his ace in the hole. I don't know what Doc's got left. And Isaac says he's got one. So Isaac, how about it?
What I just referred to. I'm going to say whether you're calling it the RKO or you're calling it the Diamond Cutter. There's only been one time that I can think of that someone actually countered it.
Really? Because I can think of a lot more times that someone kicked out of the RKO. However, the Diamond Cutter is on my list because nobody kicked out of that some bitch.
Same.
I do not think the RKO is a protected finisher. I think the punt is. So if we're going to have Randy Orton on this list, we can use the punt, but not the RKO.
And the punt is actually my ace in the hole. And it was a spirited discussion that RJ and I were having. And I can't remember if you guys were involved in it too, but RJ, he got into conversation with somebody at his work. And they were going back and forth about it, and he said it's got to be the punt kick because and it was because of how the announcers would treat it more than anything.
Oh God, yeah.
And the one he hit on Vince looked especially like, oh geez, like you were concerned for the man's safety just because of how the angle and everything like that. And there was a storyline. I feel like there was a storyline with somebody where the punt kick was banned, or he was like, you can't use it, that kind of thing. And, and the camera angles that it was filmed at too made it look like, you could see like the snot coming out of somebody's nose or, the saliva coming out of somebody's mouth, or the angle at which their head was contorted when he would kick you. That's what made it pretty devastating. And that's what made it the backbone of a lot of the feuds he was having in the 2010s. For the early 2010s.
Well, let's circle back because we mentioned technically 3 finishers, 2 different people. So we've got the Diamond Cutter from DDP and both moves from Randy Orton. Doc, your thoughts on all that?
I mean, I know Cena's kicked out of the RKO.
He has.
Edge kicked
And
out of
yeah, and I think did Hulk Hogan kick out of it when they had their whole thing?
I don't know if he did, but the Undertaker absolutely did.
So I mean, here's the thing though, like the RKO, Orton has worked so many matches, and he like pretty much always wins with that if it's not the rare punt kick. So, like in terms of sheer percentages, it is a relatively well protected finisher. I would agree. It's just that he's been around for so long and he's worked so many big matches that like it was just kind of bound to happen, sort of like the pedigree.
Yeah. That's a very good point.
But that's why I lean punt kick more as a protected finisher than RKO. Because I don't remember
if you also really look at it, the punt has been used outside of matches more than it's been used in matches.
It's been in segments. You're right.
Yeah. So it's weird because I know that that's a move that WWE has like actually banned him from using at times, and I think he's even talked about it recently.
Yeah, he has. I can't remember where, but yeah, he has talked about, about that ban. I guess for me, I guess I look at the difference between the RKO and the Diamond Cutter, kind of like Doc, what you said, the percentage points on that. DDP was undefeated with that thing. He hit it, ball game. No, Goldberg.
I was going to say there had to have been something later in WCW, especially when Russo came in. I know Russo would have booked somebody to kick out of it.
Probably so. I don't remember any of that because that's when I started. That's when I fell out of WCW. The only reason I was watching it because of my friend that wrestled and was featured in storylines. But I know like in the Bischoff era of WCW, one time, and that was that Halloween Havoc match against Goldberg for the title where they ran out of time and got cut off the air.
Oh, God, you remember that.
But he did hit the Diamond Cutter, and Goldberg got his foot on the rope or something.
Yeah.
So I've got two more, and one of them is, I think, going to either ruffle some feathers or surprise some people. But I'm going to save that one.
Of course you are.
Of course I am. And on a high note, hey, it's called The Finish, boys and girls.
Yeah, you got it.
Let's go back to ECW. The 5-star frog splash from Rob Van Dam. In WWE, not so much. ECW, hang it up.
That's like saying in ECW, the Taz mission. Nobody got out of that thing.
Bam Bam.
He went through this. He went through the.
He got out of it though, didn't he?
The ramp.
It's through the ring to do it or not. He got out of it, did he not? Doc, referee this one. I have a point.
I'm not gonna. You're right.
I mean, I'm trying to remember if Taz even ever had it fully locked in that moment, because I haven't watched that match in many years.
I think, if memory serves correctly,
No, wait. I thought it was a belly-to-belly suplex that put him through the stage.
Nope. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't the stage. It was the ring. This is when Bam Bam beat Taz for the TV title. Taz got it back at the next pay-per-view when they went through the ramp.
Okay.
But
yeah, I don't know. I never watched ECW when it was actually on because it wasn't syndicated in my area. So.
Wow, it wasn't syndicated in your area, but in Oxford, Alabama, it was.
That's the South. South is pro wrestling country. Doesn't matter if it's a New York brand.
You dude.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a New York brand though. Like the South just loved pro wrestling. I'm in the suburbs of Chicago. We didn't have ECW until it was like almost canceled.
Ooh, that sucks.
Like when it came on TNN for a year or something like that is when we got it.
Oh. Wow.
Oh yeah, it was over by that time.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty much by then.
Yeah,
Well, it's all in
Heyman
the
had already
network,
stopped
Chris, if
cutting
you want to go back and
paychecks.
watch it.
Brian, what was that?
I said it's all in the network, Chris. If you want to go back and watch it, all the episodes are there for your viewing pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bother going into Peacock for that.
Yeah.
Remember the days.
Who would have ever thought that we as Americans, we as American wrestling fans could all be united in one thing? We missed the WWE network as it was.
I mean, it was a great service after that first year when they got all the bugs worked out.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal, and that because so much, in fact, that everybody else followed it to the letter. I mean, everything.
Yeah, they won a ton of awards for like non-wrestling related things, like internet awards that are just for like best streaming service user interface, like really weird stuff like that. They would win all those things.
Right. I mean, and now go back and look at Disney Plus. Looks exactly like the old WWE network did. Exactly like it.
Pretty much.
So I mean, the innovative things that have come out of the brainchild of Vince McMahon, there are things that are still, still being used in other realms of entertainment all over the place. The model for the WWE.
This is one thing I don't think we can give Vince McMahon any credit for. The
True.
WWE network was pitched to him internally, and I guarantee you he had no say over the design interface.
And I'm sure. Yeah, you're right. He also didn't have any say so in the creation of the sky cam that you see in football games now. Like
Yeah, wasn't that was the Mythbusters guy?
No, that was XFL. Oh, you're right. He did come up with that.
The Mythbusters guy invented that Skywire camera that like literally zips across arenas. Not Adam Savage, the other one, Jamie Heineman.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Oh my! It made him like a lot of money.
I believe it.
Yeah.
So yeah, my list is expired.
I've got
I've
one.
tapped out. Go for it.
The Bonsai Drop.
Oh God.
Yokozuna. I can only think of one potential time, and I'm not even sure it actually happened. Did Hulk Hogan kick out of it at WrestleMania 9 or no?
No, he did not.
No.
So then, yeah, the Bonsai Drop.
Oh
Because how can you even kick out of it? Like, no matter how big and strong you are, that's still a 500-pound man sitting on your chest.
I'd find a way.
Yeah, I forgot all about the Bonsai.
I'm half man, half amazing. I can find a way. Just kidding.
And moving right along after that one.
No, hey, Isaac, do it right. If you're gonna do it right.
Man!
Thank you.
You got
Okay.
one?
What'd you say, Isaac?
You got one?
I got one. Do you got one?
Yes.
Go for it. No. I have a feeling yours might be less controversial than mine. I'll go ahead and do mine just in case.
You got the pitchforks and ready? Okay, good.
Yeah. Skull crushing finale.
How did I know it was going to be that?
I don't know.
Yeah. I can. I mean,
here's the thing. That move gets countered mid-move a lot. When
Right.
he hits it, it usually is a finish, though.
Right. And that's what I think is the beauty in that, because there is a point in the move where you can counter it, which creates that drama. He starts to get it locked in, and you can either power out or you can slip around it. And it's happened all the time because it just creates that suspense, that drama. But once Miz
You won't be
gets it,
needing the pitchforks. You can put them away. It's fine. I'm actually with Patrick on this one. It's good, guys. You can put them away.
but Doc's right. Once he drops you with it,
Yeah.
But
Miz has covered a nice little niche for himself. I will say that.
oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a move that's just kind of that sneaky protected. Nobody really pays attention to it. But if you really go back and look at it, I think there is an immense amount of beauty in that move. Not because it's like a beautiful move. I'm not saying it's like Pac's Black Arrow or anything. But which by the way, another protected move. He hits that damn thing good night. But it's just the fact that it's easy to counter because there's so many ways out of it. I mean, we've seen we've seen Cena transition right into an STF out of it. There's so many ways to avoid it. But once
You know what's funny too is I think it's become more protected over time. Like I think when people kicked out of it, it was like years ago.
Yeah, I think when people were kicking out of it was before he even won Money in the Bank the first time.
Yeah.
Does everyone think that once you become like a main event guy, your finisher becomes more protected?
Nope. Cena.
Okay, then here's mine. Tombstone.
Thank you. It's on my list, but I didn't say it because I'm like, yeah, too much of a slam dunk. But you're right. I mean, WrestleMania 25 was the first time anybody ever did it. And when Shawn did it, everybody lost their damn minds.
I love the reaction from The Undertaker on that when it was just, what? Yeah.
Wow. Chef's kiss, beautiful. And the fact that there was a camera right there was just like, you can't plan that. Doc, thoughts on that? Because I think Brian's just kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's an extremely protected move. I could have sworn Kane kicked out of it once.
I was about to say the same thing, but I feel like we're thinking about the choke slams at WrestleMania 14, where he kicked out of two of them before the third one, and then even right after he counted three, Kane like rolled off the shoulder, and but the Tombstone done.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But there were a lot.
We started seeing some people kick out of it, but still, even not that many.
But I kept thinking that all of the Undertaker's moves were pretty much protected. Hell's Gate, not many people got out of that. It was counted by Kurt Angle one time, and the Last Ride.
And then Lesnar rolled him into that pin that was really like sloppy, but they still counted it.
Yeah.
Oh, was that at SummerSlam where they were laughing at each other? That match?
Yeah.
I think it was, yeah.
Okay.
And then Lesnar got pinned while Taker was technically tapping out.
Yeah, so Lesnar's kicked out of it for sure. I think Reigns did in one of their WrestleMania matches, right?
Reigns did in Orlando. Brock did it at 30. Shawn did it at 25. I cannot remember if Hunter did it in either one of their two matches.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe an end of an era.
In the Hell in the Cell, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I wouldn't be surprised to find out that Foley kicked out of it once, but I can't recall any times it happened.
I can't either. No, there's no way he did, because I know for a fact, at least I'm 99.9% sure, Shawn at WrestleMania 25 was the first. At least that's what I've always been led to believe. So if I'm right on that, then Foley definitely did not kick out of it. But, I've been wrong before. Plenty
Yeah.
of. So, does anybody else have any other ones that they want to add that they might have come up with during this little discussion of ours? Which, gotta be honest, this has been good.
Yeah.
I mean, Sting's Scorpion Death Drop was really protected for a very long time. I don't know how it was treated in TNA for the last 4 or 5 years that he was there that I stopped watching, but in WCW that was pretty much a nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I would agree.
Granted, it was only a short time. He was still using the Scorpion Deathlock, and that's what he'd been using for years before that. That was only introduced after the Crow stuff started.
Right.
But it was still like, yeah, that was his move for a long time.
I just thought of another one going way, 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 way back, but definitely a protected finisher back then. The Superfly Splash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Snook kicked that ball game.
I mean, back
We got
then,
a-
everybody's finisher was relatively well protected. Like, the idea of kicking out of a finisher was kind of insulting during Snuka's era.
True. Very true.
Like, they really would only save it for big things, and it was only if, like, both guys were cool with it. Like, Hogan kicking out of whatever finisher Andre would have been using at the time, because I think Andre used a few different things.
Right. Hogan powering out of the camel clutch to win the title the first time.
Right.
Yeah, you're right about that. I guess I was just kind of looking at the fact of, just the mystique that move carried back then. But you're right.
But even for many years, Macho Man's elbow drop was ultra protected.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It
wasn't really until the 90s that like kicking out of finishers became a regular spot.
You're right. So as we're getting out of here, let me flip this completely on its head and ask you guys a question right off the top of your heads. So we've talked about all of these finishers, and some of them we say, in my opinion, this is the most protected, blah, 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 blah. What's the least protected finisher in all of wrestling?
What was Lana's finisher?
I don't think you can even classify that one, man. I would have to say, if we're gonna have that discussion about the least protected, it's got to be a main eventer. It can't be, Doink the Clown or
the zigzag.
Yes.
A million people have kicked out of that.
And we talked about the attitude adjustment earlier. I mean, for being a main eventer for as long as he was, Cena's finisher was never really that, cut and dried.
And I got one more for you. And it doesn't apply to one person because it wasn't his finisher. It was his setup. Anybody that's ever tried to use the spear as a finish, not protected. None of them. Edge, Lashley, Roman. The only person that ever had that protected as a finish was Rhino.
Right.
And his is like, stylistically, his is almost different enough to call it more of the pound. Like, his is closer to a pounce in a lot of cases.
Yeah, the gore was definitely a combination, somewhere in between, because of how he hit and the violence that he hit it with.
Like, sometimes it almost looked like a mid-body clothesline the way he would hit it.
Yeah.
And then other times he was just driving his shoulder through a dude.
I felt
in the SmackDown set.
Yeah, I felt sorry for any poor sap that ever happened to. But think about it though. If we're talking least protected, Edge, Roman, Lashley, who Who else finished with a spear? There's somebody else, and I'm blanking on them.
I mean, there's been a few guys over the years who've tried it as a finish and it didn't stick.
Right, and none of them, even the ones who were.
And then you got guys like the Young Bucks doing them as a signature move, but like it's never a finish.
The Young Bucks, to me, are like sometimes with some of their moveset and what they incorporate. It's like that guy that creates a character in WWE 2K22, and their entire moveset are finishers.
Right.
I mean, and I've gone on record on the show, the Bucks aren't necessarily my cup of tea, but realistically speaking, you look at their moveset and 90% of their moves are somebody else's finisher.
Yeah.
Which you could argue is their way of showing respect to those people that have influenced them.
Right.
It's also kind of a trolly thing to do when they're bad guys, too.
Very much so.
Oh, yeah.
Very much so. So let's switch gears real quick and get off of this topic. Are we all caught up to speed with the events of last night's night one of Fyter Fest? Doc, obviously, I know we don't have to ask you this. It's kind of your job to know these things.
I mean, yeah, I watched the show. I probably couldn't tell you segment for segment what happened, though.
Oh, I'm just going to mention one segment and one segment only. Anybody else surprised that we have new tag team champs?
Yes.
That surprised me.
I was very. Don't get me wrong. I love Keith Lee and Swerve. I love them. I think I think the way they team up is and just their chemistry, I think, is great. That one really surprised me. But I will say that match was fun, not just because of what the Bucks brought to the table, but Swerve matching in pretty much crazy bullshit move for crazy bullshit move.
And I'll give props to Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs for filling out that match, especially when Powerhouse and Keith Lee, I would love to see them go at it. I mean, if they split off into a little mini feud, fine by me.
I cannot believe I'm going to do this because Doc was here the night that I completely bashed this guy. Give Ricky Starks his damn flowers. Holy crap.
You want to talk about a brutal looking spear? The one that he hit in that match looked like it killed the dude. Like, I saw so many people commenting on that on Twitter, like, what a freaking spear that was.
Jim Ross back in the day would talk about how a spear would saw someone in half. Yeah. It was definitely.
The more I think about it, guys, last night was about people rising to the occasion. And I think AEW needs that because you've got the top level people. I tweeted at Anna Jay this morning and I said that there were moments in that match last night where I thought you were going to get the W. I knew it would not make any sense for her to beat Serena Deeb, but she had me believing at several points during that match that she was going to find a way to get the W. So she's come so far in such a short amount of time, and she needed a match like that.
Yeah, the fact that any match with Serena went more than 5 minutes helped put Anna over a little bit.
Absolutely.
I thought that she more than held her own with someone that's way beyond her depth.
Yes.
But that's also, I think that's also something to be said about just how good Serena is. So that one was another thing that I saw from Dynamite last night. I was very impressed with how they put the match together. They made Wardlow look beatable.
When I heard about that match, I'm like, okay, because, you know, as listeners to the show know, I dig me some Orange Cassidy, but I'm like, what is this going to do? And this had to be, now that the match has happened, it couldn't have happened any other way, because Orange Cassidy is the first guy of consequence that he's wrestled since he broke away from MJF. And give Orange Cassidy credit for trying to throw every trick in the book at him, you know, best friends and Danhausen and all the shenanigans. But then there was also wrestling going on in the ring. And the commentators mentioned how he kind of took Wardlow to places he hadn't been yet. It's not just a powerbomb symphony and done. It's, no, you're going to have to come up with a way to beat me here.
Yeah,
Right.
they did a good job structuring that match. It was actually really entertaining from like both a comedic standpoint and just a wrestling standpoint.
Exactly. I was thinking the exact same thing, Doc. I love the fact that from the pre-match promo segment with Cassidy and the best friends, the best friend saying, "We're gonna cheat a lot." Cassidy responds, "I don't." And Trent, was it Trent or Chuck that went under the ring and brought out a flipping chainsaw?
Chuck.
It was
That was
Chuck.
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 He goes under the ring, and I'm like, all right, cool, chair, something like that. He pulled out that chainsaw. I'm like, what the hell? And it was so freaking funny because it was just a disaster.
Points for trying.
Oh my, it was so great. And it was just funny because you got that, and then they got ejected, and then Wardlow pulls Danhausen out from under the ring, and they have that interaction. And once that got out of the way, we got the comedy in, and now let's get to business. And as soon as Danhausen was removed from the equation, that match became a completely different story and a completely different type of entertainment, and I loved it. I had a thought, I was completely derailed. Let me ask you something, Doc. Since obviously and you're kind of have a finger on the pulse more than we do. Who at this point would be the guy to take the TNT title off Wardlow, or are we even that far yet?
I don't think it's something they're thinking about anytime soon. I think they're going to give him a longer reign than they did Sky or Guevara. But I don't know, because like it really depends on the relationship that he has with Tony right now. But I could absolutely see them bringing Brian Cage back in and just immediately making him like the one guy that can actually push Wardlow to his limit.
Oh my God, Brian Cage versus Wardlow. Jesus.
I mean, didn't we get that match like a couple of years ago in AEW? I want to say I remember that match happening.
I think we might have, but at the same time, Wardlow's a completely different animal now.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I could see that being the case. If it's not him, then it's got to be an underdog type thing, like a Wheeler Yuta or somebody who you just don't think has a chance. And then
I'm gonna botch his
Doc.
name, so forgive me. But would you run? I can't even pronounce his name. The guy that wrestled Moxley last night.
Takeshita.
Kushida?
Would you run him at him as like a out of nowhere kind of thing? I mean, because he could take. I mean, it's got to be somebody that can take Wardlow into deep water. It's not going to be somebody who stuns him and gets like a 2-minute match kind of thing. Because it's the Goldberg argument, isn't it? I mean, if Goldberg went out and had like 2-minute matches, fine. And then the minute they make him go 10, 15, the flaws are exposed. We don't know what kind of flaws Wardlow has, if any. But that's kind of my thing. I've never really been into that kind of a wrestler in my lifetime. So I like seeing wrestlers get lengthened out and see what they can do. So would you run somebody like him at him?
As a challenger, yeah, I don't think I would put Takeshita as the guy to beat him.
I agree, but I agree completely with what Doc said for one simple reason. I would love to see that match.
And Takeshita is a bigger dude than people I think realize. Like, he's a little bigger than Moxley.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that punishment he absorbed last night. I mean, that match wore me out.
Yeah, so I could see that being a match that they use to really test Wardlow, but yeah, I don't see that being the guy to beat him necessarily. Unless, I don't know, it depends on how much they want to use Takeshita and how much he wants to stay in the United States. Like, we really don't know what his situation's like. He's a DDT guy, so yeah.
Right. One thing I will say, Brian, and I unless we have anything else that pops up after this, I say we probably wrap it up from here. One thing I will disagree with you on. You talked about Wardlow being kind of Goldberg-esque, and his matches don't necessarily get stretched out. Well, last night we definitely saw Wardlow dragged, maybe not into the deepest water, but he was definitely definitely off the shallow end.
And I'm not saying that that's what they're doing with him, but it's giving, the treatment is giving me those kind of vibes. The shots of him walking through the hallways, from the parking lot or from the locker room, and then through the corridor and all that. And the chants that the fans are doing, it's very much an homage to the way Goldberg was treated. Time will tell, I guess, is what I'm saying, as far as what kind of a guy Wardlow becomes if he continues his ascension and is the top guy after a couple more years.
I think we've already surpassed, in terms of in-ring product, we've already surpassed Goldberg as far as Wardlow goes. Wardlow can already cut a, massively better promo than Goldberg ever could. He has already in his career spent a longer time combined in the ring than Goldberg did his entire career, in my opinion. Because I think Goldberg's longest match was 3 minutes. I'm being facetious here, but you guys
Right.
get.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, I think it's an homage, but I don't. I think that's where the comparisons stop.
Yeah.
I think Wardlow is a guy that you could easily put as the face of your company. He's got a great look. He's got a great presence. Women think he's hot. I mean, men think he's hot too. I mean, hey, whatever. But he's a marketable face. And that's something that I think really plays in his favor, is the fact that, yeah, he's this smashing machine in the ring, but this is a guy that you can really put out there and go, yeah, this is our guy. Doc, am I off base on that, Doc?
No, I mean, I think Wardlow is somebody that's very marketable. I mean, the women love Wardlow. So I don't know if you guys have caught on to this, but there is a lot of Wardlow thirst on Twitter. And I personally know a few. Yeah, I personally know a few women who are quite into him. So I think he's one of those people that appeals to all the demographics. He's like a superhero to the kids. He's a big macho alpha dude for the guys, and then he's like a hot stud for the ladies. It's not often that you get somebody who appeals to every segment like that. So
Right.
yeah, they're going to recognize his popularity and continue to use him. It's just whether or not he lives up to the expectations is the question. So far he has, and I think he will, but you never know. Sometimes people get tested and they're not ready.
Right. And I think what you just said, I think it's the real case, because you see interviews online with him, and you just, at least for me, I just get this feeling that he just seems like a pretty good dude. So
I mean, I interviewed him and he was super nice.
I completely
way
forgot.
Yeah,
Sorry.
way more laid back than you'd probably expect. Like we literally, I think, spent 10 minutes talking about superheroes and comic books and stuff.
Nice. That's awesome, man. See, this is the kind. This is the kind of deep in the weed stuff that we get from Doc and why we love him. So I'm glad we were able to talk about Dynamite because I thought last night was a amazingly put together show from top to bottom. And I like where we're going as we're slowly starting to build toward All Out. So, gentlemen, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Isaac, Brian, any final thoughts before I give the final word to the good doctor?
Well, just thanks for joining us, Doc. It's always a pleasure to have you on here because you bring some tremendous insight, and it's much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's always fun.
Always a pleasure. Isaac, you got anything?
No, just a big thank you. Good topic tonight. I think it was good for everyone all around.
Agreed.
I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, and you know what? We'll figure out what next week's is at some point this week. Doc, final words. You got anything coming down the pipe that you might want to kind of hype up or anything going on in your line of work?
I got an FTR interview that publishes Friday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. So I got to interview them separately for one article. And it was so crazy because their answers were so similar for so many things. Like they would word it each completely differently, but they have the exact same viewpoints about everything. It was almost nuts how much it lined up to the point where it's like, these guys really are the perfect partners for each other. So that was a big bucket list interview for me. And I'm sure you guys have probably seen some of those little like shout outs I have the wrestlers do for people. And that was a super fulfilling one because I got to do one for my buddy Rob with Dax giving this really nice message about the importance of mental health. And then the one that Cash did for my two internet daughters, Kylie and Haley, was so sweet. So yeah, I was really happy that all that worked out.
And that was awesome. And that, kind of, I guess personally for me, that's another reason I have really gravitated even more to those guys is how Dax has really gotten out there in terms of being upfront about mental health. That's a big deal for me too. So when he goes into the weeds in that, it's just really awesome to hear it from a wrestler that I insanely respect. So definitely looking forward to reading that in the morning. That'll be great.
Yeah, I'll be publishing that tomorrow morning, and I'll be plugging it all over Twitter.
Well, and I know 3 guys will probably be hitting the share button. Raise your hand, guys. Hi.
Retweet.
Retweet coming up. Oh, plenty. Well, we are going to get the music's playing, which means it's time for me to shut the hell up. So let's go ahead and get them out of the way. Thank you guys again for listening on Anchor Podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, watching us on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for being a part of our little ongoing love letter to pro wrestling. We appreciate it. I'm at Rant Mode On. Brian's at BCrigo15. Isaac is at I4th. And of course, Doc Chris Mueller. You can find him at BR_Doctor. And we are out of here. For everybody involved in the show, again, Doc, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. It is always a blast being able to touch base with you and just talk shop with you. So again, for the rest of the guys and myself, thank you, man.
Oh, thanks for the invite.
So for Doc, for Brian, for Isaac, I'm Patrick. Again, thanks for watching and listening to Wrestling with Egos. And until next week, just remember that this, it's why we love wrestling.